So it's been a bit of a process to get the car to a point where I'm happy enough to show it to you, but I think I've got there now. Hi, welcome to Sven's Bricks. Today I'm going to be attempting something that I've not tried before, and that is a 7-stud build. As the observant of you may notice, the 911 is back in its 6-stud form, as myself and many others felt that it was too wide in an 8-stud version, so we're going to try this in a 7-stud today. So I have done a little bit of prep work this time. I've put together a sort of prototype version, which is very colourful, and I think that the dimensions look as though these should be pretty good. I've extended the model by only 1 stud in each direction, so both in width and in length. And as with my 8-stud conversion, I've dropped the windscreen 2 plates in order to get the angle right. So I'm going to be using this as a kind of basis for my model, and we're going to pull this one apart like we have done in previous videos and start piecing them together. I think we can improve upon the strength in the prototype. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to build up this base using more appropriate colours, and then after we've got the base right, we're then going to start transferring the pieces from the original set over. So to begin with, I'm just going to create these red bits here, but in black, and I'm going to do that with these pieces here. So that is this first layer here, all the red plates and those 2 dark grey plates there. So we can lift these off, and then we can carry on with the white plates underneath here and the Technic bricks for the wheels. I'm going to add black 2x3 bricks here, which I think will help us with the structure of the model. Because we're going with a 6-stud windscreen in a 7-wide build, we're going to need to offset the windscreen, and I'm going to do that using a bunch of jumpers here. That piece can now sit under there. At this point, I think we can start to slowly dismantle the original car into some smaller sections. And we can then move over our 4x1 snot piece, adding in an extra 1 there for width. Having moved the wheel arches over, this is now how it looks. I'll continue from there by dismantling this front section a bit more. And under those, I'm actually going to put in a 2x1 brick and a 3x1 brick, just in order to increase the strength a bit. So at the moment, it's not very strong, this model, but we're going to improve that by adding the side panels on and then putting in some plates in between. For the sides, I've just added a 1x6 plate underneath there, and I've also added another 2-wide slope to replace the 1x slope as we're extending it. And we're going to leave a gap here at the front because the windscreen is going to sit there. So these are just going to go on like this. And then to help a bit with the rigidity, we're going to add in a 2x3 plate at the bottom in there, 2 1x3 plates on top of those, and 2 1x4 plates along the sides here as well. We're going to slide in a 1x4 plate, which is currently loose in there right at the back, because on top of that we're going to place a 1x6 plate with a couple of jumper plates in order to realign the back section with this middle. We're then just going to add a 1x4 plate to either side, and we're already looking at a stronger model. Our windscreen can then be dropped in, and this one I've just placed a 1x6 brick underneath and 2 1x2 plates, and that one can just go in like that. We then need to add an extra stud in width to the front section of the car, and because I don't make this rounded plate in a 3x6, I'm going to make my own using a couple of these 3x3 rounded plates and place a 1x3 in between. From there I should be able to just shift the pieces over and add in my own 1x2 brick in the middle and a 1x3 black plate. Now I don't like the fact that these are black. I think they should be white, so I'm going to swap those out for white ones. And then we're going to add our headlight bricks back in. For this front section, I've actually prepared a replacement. So I just replaced a 2x1 plate with a 3x1 plate, and then I've added a 1x1 plate in between there and a 1x1 tile on top. And that should then fit onto there. So this should now insert into the front of the car. And then from the original hood section, we can use these blue L plates to fill in the gaps in here. And I'm going to add a 1x4 plate inside there just to really strengthen that front section, as well as a couple of 1x3s and finally a 1x1 in that last little gap there. From there, we're adding two 2x3 plates, which will further help to solidify the model. And then in front of that, a 1x3 plate. Now, the colour doesn't matter here because you won't see this. And then because it's going to be a 7 stud wide build, we're not going to be able to use this 2 wide in the middle here. We're going to need to use a 1 wide. So I'm using one of these 1 wide slopes, and I'm placing that on a 1x2 plate. And that is just going to go right in the middle like that. We can then move our slopes from the original build over, add in a couple of 1x2 plates down the sides there, and a couple more of these 1x slopes for our new front end. Next we have this back section, which is basically where the exhaust sits underneath the very back of the car. I'm just going to add in another snot piece in the middle here, a 1x1 snot piece in here. I'm going to replace these black 1x1 plates for white because I think that will look better. And then I'm also going to add in an extra grey plate inside there. So I then just need to add a couple of tiles. I'll use a 1x3 across there, and a 1x2 over there, and finally a 1x1 grey one there, which can then be attached to the back end, like so. Next we need to work on this back light section. Because I'm not going to be able to get this perfectly round shape in a 7 stud wide build, I'm going to need to settle for these little plates, which they don't do perfectly round. But they will do a good job, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a 2x4 plate and a 1x4 plate, and then I'm going to add in a 1x3 plate on that side and a 1x2 plate on this side, and then just finishing that off with a 2x3 plate at the back for a bit of extra strength. We're then able to place the white layer underneath, and for the white layer we're going to do the opposite here. We're going to place the 2x4 on that side and the 1x4 on that side. That should then go onto the car, and we can then move over these slopes. And then we're going to have to go for a bit of a different design for the back here because we've got an extra stud in the middle. I think for now at least we're going to use these slightly more wedge-like pieces here, and then put in the cheese slopes in between there. Maybe that it exposes a bit too much red here, but I think I'll look at that a bit later. I think from here I'd quite like to get the wheels on. I'm going to use these older dark grey Technic pins because they won't be as noticeable in the grey colour. So I'm going to add in 3 1x4 plates there across that section. I think for that back wheel arch we're going to need to put in a couple of 1x1 plates in there, and then a 2x1 and a 3x1 plate on top there. That is now much more solid. We're then just going to fill out this front section a little. I've got a 1x1 and a 2x1 plate, which I'm just going to place in that little gap there. And a 1x3 and a 1x1 to fill in that little gap there. Okay, I'm just going to add in a bit of plate work into the front here and then tile that off. Now, I've just been toying with the idea of adding in one of these windscreen pieces like I did with the Camaro, but unfortunately these wheel mudguard pieces here have studs in here which prevent me from using jumpers to bring this to the right height. So I think I'm going to stick with these back pieces and then make a little bit of a black sticker myself. I'm going to need to raise this another plate, so I'm putting in a 2x3 plate there and another one in there where you can't see the colour anyway. And a couple of bricks in these gaps here. Fill the gaps here with 1x1 studs and place 2x4 plates onto there so that we can lift off our arch pieces and our little wedge there. Place in another 1x4 in there, and a 1x1 there, and a 1x4 just there, because I can now place these sloped pieces over the top, adding an extra one down the middle, which I will then create a sticker for a bit later on. So I don't really think there's any way around it, but the spoiler is going to have to be quite a flimsy piece. And the reason is that we're adding in an extra stud here where it's very difficult to do so. So what I've done is that I've extended this back plate here by a single plate, and then I've moved the double cheese slope across and added in an extra single cheese wedge in there. And then I've added in a 1x2 plate with a 1x1 on top of it there, and connected that to the original outside bit section there. I'm going to need to remove these, I think, and I think I will prefer the look of cheese wedges at the back here. So I think the car's looking pretty good, but I have a few questions about the proportions, whether this bonnet section is too long, and then also how I'm going to join the roof with the offset windscreen. So I'm going to take a little bit of time just to look at that, and then I'll be right back. And not for the first time, I came pretty close to giving up once or twice, and I've actually already recorded this entire ending once already before, and then overnight I came up with a better idea, particularly for the back end of the car, which I wasn't very happy with. So it's been a bit of a process to get the car to a point where I'm happy enough to show it to you, but I think I've got there now. So firstly, we have the front section of the car, where I've tidied this up a bit by adding in the wedged slopes here instead. And then behind those, a couple of cheese slopes. So it's not perfect, but previously it was very squared off at the front here, and I think this just helps to give a bit more of that rounded front end that we have on a real car. I then added in the original 2 slopes at the bottom here with stickers. And then for the first time ever, I've printed out my first sticker to create the little logo on the front there. And finally, I put these black bricks back in here because the real car actually has this black section here. Moving on to the sides, I actually decided to remove the sloped parts completely as they stuck out way too far here. And whilst I wish that this was a bit more sloped here, I think it's more accurate like this. Moving around to the back of the car, I've added in these 2 black 1x1 studs, like the real car also has there. And then I've also put the roof from the 8 wide build on, so that one's just created with tiles, and then underneath we have the inverted tiles, which do allow us only just to get the minifig in there, so I can put him in there. And he then needs to sit back a little bit, but that does fit on. Like that. But now for the bit I'm most proud of, and that's the back windscreen. So as you know, the plan was to use these pieces, and I actually created my own stickers to go inside here, but the window wasn't tall enough and it left way too much white roof exposed, so it threw the proportions off a little bit. Plus I really wanted to have a real window here, but I hadn't succeeded using a windscreen piece. So I thought I'd try just a flat window on top of one of these hinged parts. But because of this wheel arch piece here, it wouldn't angle down enough for it to sit along this sloped part. So what I've come up with is just to have the window piece completely loose inside. And I originally had this just with a 1x4 tile there, but then there was a bit of a gap here. So what I did was I placed these wedged slopes on the side here, and that fits in just really, really perfectly in there. It not only helps to round off the shape here, but it hides the gap here, and the window is really locked into place. It really doesn't move at all, and even if you hold the model upside down, it doesn't fall out. So I had to remove quite a bit of plate work that was underneath here, right down to the wheel arch there, in order to then place a couple of jumpers on each side here to realign that with the windscreen section, which is of course offset. I also built up these bricks here with a couple of plates and tiles for the windscreen to sit on. I placed in some black tiles in here as a little shelf for the back of the car. And then I can show you how that comes together. So this whole section is one piece. And then the windscreen literally just rests inside there. I'm not exaggerating when I say that it was quite an alleluia moment once I put in those wedge slope parts in the back there, because I was quite happy with it with the tile, but because of that gap there, I didn't know what to do. There wasn't enough space for a stud in there, so I had to use some form of a tile. And then when I put those in, the shape was just perfect. So I am actually really pleased with the way that this has come out now. It was quite an obstacle in the way. But this is what makes this so enjoyable for me, is coming across new challenges that I've not found before and finding solutions. There are so many pieces to choose from, so many different ways you can connect things and place things that I'm learning as I'm going along, quite simply. I'm not totally satisfied with the structural integrity of the model, so I may look at strengthening it a bit more before I create instructions. However, I definitely will be creating instructions, and if that's something that interests you, be sure to like the video. I'll be back again next week. Thank you for watching, and bye for now.